If you've made it to this broadcast today, July 29th, there's one thing that needs to be said before anything else. Your being here is not accidental. It wasn't the algorithm. It wasn't a random click. It wasn't passing curiosity. In the last 3 days, something has been different inside you. You've woken up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason, between 3 and 5 in the morning, with that strange feeling that you needed to remember something important and couldn't. You've spent hours in normal conversations at work with family, but a part of you remained silent, watching everything from a distance, as if waiting for a signal. A restlessness with no name, a weight in your chest that daily routine can't explain. A persistent sense that an invisible threshold is approaching, and you'll need to decide whether to cross it or not. If any of these descriptions made you stop scrolling just now, you've just received the first confirmation that you're in the right place at the right time with the right information, and what comes in the next few minutes will completely rearrange the way you look at this date that is marked in the sky. There is a distinction that needs to be made immediately. At this very moment, millions of people around the planet are feeling the same thing you're feeling, the same agitation, the same subtle pressure in the solar plexus, the same difficulty sleeping deeply. But the vast majority of those people will attribute this state to ordinary things. They'll blame work stress, a heavy week, a pending argument, hormones, dry weather, age. They'll medicate their sleep. They'll rationalize the emotion. And they'll pass through this window without realizing the window existed. They'll wake up in August exactly the same as they were in July, only more tired. You are part of a much smaller group, a silent minority that has learned, even without knowing how, to recognize the difference between common fatigue and the call that comes from below, from the center, from the place inside you that knows things before your mind understands. This video is for that minority. If you weren't part of it, you would probably have closed it already. The fact that you're still watching is the second confirmation. Now let's talk about July 29th and the sky. Tonight's full moon has been called by different names in esoteric texts and ancestral traditions, but all these traditions point to the same thing. One of the moments of the year when the planet's energetic structure becomes thinner, more permeable, more receptive. In practical terms, what does that mean? It means that what you carry hidden, guarded, repressed, becomes more visible inside you. Old emotions return uninvited. Out-of-context memories appear in the middle of the day. Patterns you thought were resolved knock on the door again. Less attentive people interpret this as a relapse, as failure, as confirmation that they will never get out of where they are. More attentive people understand that this is a purge. It is the unconscious handing over at the doorstep of consciousness what needs to be resolved before the next cycle begins. And here comes the first important de-romanticization of this video. A portal is not the astronomical event. A portal is not the moon in the sky. A portal is the exact point where the cost of staying stuck in your current life becomes greater than the fear of taking the next step. You take the step, and then the ground appears. Never before. The full moon of July 29th will do nothing for you. It only shines with an intensity out of the ordinary, on what was already inside you. What you do with what it illuminates, that is what decides the next chapter. And this is where we need to talk about the 144,000. This number appears in sacred texts, in ancient prophecies, in mystical traditions from completely different origins, and it's always associated with the same idea. A specific group of people, incarnated at specific moments in history, with an internal function, a silent mission, an energetic contract that most of them don't remember signing. The shallowest interpretations turn this into religious fantasy or a delusion of superiority. But the most functional, most pragmatic, most realistic version of this idea is the following. There is, yes, a specific number of people in each generation who carry a kind of sensitivity that makes them incapable of living fully asleep. These people try, often. They try to be normal. They try to ignore the signs. They try to fit into lives that others have chosen for them. And they fail. They fail in very characteristic ways. They can't hold down jobs they consider empty. They can't stay in relationships that require them to dim themselves. They can't pretend not to see what they see. If you recognized yourself in at least one of these lines, you don't need any more proof. You already know. The problem is that recognizing isn't enough. Recognizing without structure becomes chronic suffering. It's knowing that something greater is calling to you, but having no clue how to answer. It's at this point that most of the 144,000 give up, not on existing, on accessing. They spend the rest of their lives with the antenna on and no manual, turning their own calling into exhaustion. That's why I prepared Magia M28 Exercicios as 28 Chaves do Despertar, a journey of 28 days, exactly one full lunar cycle, starting from this full moon on July 29th. Its purpose is singular, to turn your restlessness into language, your shadow into clarity, your signs into decisions, and your awareness into practical direction. It's not a theoretical course. It's 28 keys applied day after day, each with a concrete exercise that reorganizes a layer of your internal structure, so that at the end of this cycle, you are no longer guessing who you are living it. The link is in the first pinned comment. If you felt that this transmission found you for some reason, leave a comment with the word Despertar. This comment functions as a public energetic contract between you and the next cycle. Tonight's full moon represents a phase of the lunar cycle in which the reflected solar energy reaches its peak saturation. Translating to what matters, it's the moment when what was growing inside you during the new moon and taking shape during the waxing moon finds its point of revelation. What needed to surface surfaces. What needed to be seen is seen. What needed to be decided demands a decision. Think of your internal structure as an ocean. For most of the month, there's a reasonably calm surface that hides everything beneath. You look inside yourself and see only the first few meters. What's buried underneath? Old memories, pending decisions, versions of yourself you tried to erase, remains invisible even to you. The full moon is the wind that stirs that ocean. It doesn't create what's down there. It merely brings to the surface what already existed. That's why so many people on this date suffer from insomnia for no reason. They cry over a song. They dream of people they haven't seen in 10 years. They remember a phrase heard in childhood, and it gets stuck in their thoughts all day. It's not coincidence, it's the tide. Ancient cultures knew this long before science described hormonal cycles, sleep cycles, mood cycles. They simply observed, generation after generation, that the full moon coincided with concrete increases in births, conflicts, shifts in decisions, silent ruptures. And they organized collective life around it. You living in a city with artificial light 24 hours a day, with screens competing for your attention all the time, lost that internal clock. But it didn't die. It just got buried under layers of notifications, under productivity pressure, under the lie that you need to be always available. The full moon is one of the few moments when that clock can still send messages, even beneath all the modern interference. And the body listens before the mind. That's why you feel before you understand. That's why the sensation arrives days before the date. There is a difference that needs to be made clear. An ordinary full moon illuminates. The full moon of July 29th, the way it positions itself in this specific year, in the calendar of this cycle, falls within a window where several lines cross at the same time. I'm not going into technical details because that's not the purpose of this video. What matters is this. Those who have sensitivity to pick it up, pick it up. Those who don't, attribute it to other things. And here comes a question you might need to answer before continuing. Comment I feel the window. If right now, upon hearing this, some part of you recognized that you were already feeling this, even before I described it. Writing that comment isn't formalism. It's a declaration to yourself. It's a marker in time. 3 months from now, when you come back to this page, you'll read your own comment, and you'll understand exactly where you were and how you responded when the call came. Now we need to go deeper into the concrete signs that many people are feeling right now, but are interpreting completely wrong. The first sign is a change in sleep pattern. People who sleep well start waking up between 3 and 5 in the morning for no apparent reason, with a strange sensation that someone tried to talk to them in a dream. The second sign is an emotional sensitivity out of the ordinary. Small things cause disproportionate reactions. A song plays on the radio and you cry without knowing why. A trivial conversation destabilizes you for the whole day. The third sign is a sudden loss of tolerance. You realize you can no longer fake interest in shallow conversations. You realize you can't stand being in certain environments anymore. You realize that your body itself refuses to eat certain foods, to frequent certain places, to engage in certain dynamics. The fourth sign is a sudden clarity about the people around you. You look at someone who has always been in your life, and, out of nowhere, you see that person in a way you've never seen before. And it hurts because once you see, you can't unsee. The fifth sign is the insistence of the same thought, the same idea, the same image, coming back several times a day. A decision you've been putting off for 3 years, a dream you've been burying since adolescence, a person you need to forgive or let go, a place that keeps appearing in your daydreams. This thought is not intrusive, it is the map. It comes back because the part of you that hasn't been lived yet is asking for passage, and it will return stronger and more frequent the more you ignore it. Let me describe a typical scene you might recognize. A regular Tuesday mid-afternoon, you're working or driving or washing dishes, and out of nowhere, with no apparent trigger, a subtle sadness settles in your chest. It's not crying. It's a specific kind of internal silence, as if someone had paused the soundtrack of your life. You try to continue what you were doing. You put on music, call someone, and the feeling remains there, subtle but persistent, like a background hum that only you hear. It happens for the first time in January, again in March, a third time in May, and each time it appears a little stronger. Most people medicate this feeling, distract themselves, ignore it, and it gradually becomes what is commonly called burnout, the 30-something crisis, the 40-something crisis, depression without reason. But what's happening is much simpler than that. It's your current life asking permission to end because another life is trying to begin underneath it. And it will insist on warning you through increasingly less subtle means until you pay attention. The absolute majority of the population will experience these 5 signs in the coming weeks and will do nothing with them. They will medicate sleep, rationalize the emotion, force tolerance, go back to pretending they didn't see what they saw, and push the recurring thought to the back of their mind. Will reach October, November, December exactly as they were in July, only more tired and more bitter, with a greater dose of resignation. The minority will do differently. The minority will take notes. The minority will ask. The minority will accept that these signs are the language that your next version is using to try to emerge. If this transmission is making sense so far, the Magia M28 Exercitious was built exactly for this phase. Each of the 28 keys addresses one of these patterns and teaches in practice how to turn each sign into a decision. The link is in the first pinned comment. The window of this full moon does not repeat in the same format until 2027. Acting today is different from acting 2 weeks from now. It's worth looking now at what civilizations much older than ours did with these celestial events. The Egyptians organized specific rituals around the lunar phases because they understood that the internal cycles of purification, decision, and commitment worked better when aligned with an external marker. A priest did not randomly choose the day to initiate a disciple. He chose the exact moon phase when sensitivity was open and memory more permeable. The Mayans built entire calendars based on observation of the moon and the sky because they realized that collective decisions had different results depending on when they were made. Wars started in certain phases resulted in cycles of defeat. Alliances made in other phases lasted generations. They weren't superstitious. They were silent statisticians, observing the same pattern repeat for centuries. Jewish Kabbalah speaks of time portals called windows of mercy, moments of the year when inner effort yields more than it would at other times. It's as if on certain dates, time itself compresses results, and a decision made there equals the effect of months of ordinary decisions. Eastern traditions speak of energy channels that open during specific lunar phases, allowing the practitioner to advance in a single cycle what would take years to mature under normal circumstances. The shamanisms of the Americas work with lunar cycles for healing retreats, always marking the start of these processes at the full moon, because they understand that revelation precedes integration. All these traditions, though born on different continents, in different eras with no contact among themselves, arrived at the same practical conclusion. There is an alignment between the sky and the within, and there are moments of the year when that alignment becomes exposed, evident, available. July 29th of this specific year is one of those moments. Not because the moon will do some magic, but because the internal cost of continuing to ignore what you already know will become unsustainable. And the body, more than the mind, will begin to ask for movement. It will ask through poor sleep, strange appetite, irritation without reason, the sudden urge to disappear for a few days. Is this sabotage? No. It is pressure for the turning. And here it's important to pause to talk about this channel. Every video published here is not an isolated video. Every video is a coordinate within a larger map. Today's video explains the window of July 29th. The next videos will explain what happens during the 28 days that follow this full moon, what the decision points are, what the risks are, what the specific opportunities of each week are. Those who are not subscribed receive only random fragments of the map. Those who are subscribed receive the map in sequence. If you've made it this far and this transmission is resonating, subscribe now, ring the bell. Because missing the next video is missing the context of what comes after this window. It's not about supporting me. It's about you not being left with loose pieces of something that only makes sense in order. Now we arrive at the question that will run through the rest of this video. Are you part of the 144,000? I'm not asking that the way a motivational video would, expecting you to say yes to feel special and then go back to the same life. I'm asking in a concrete way. Being part of this group is not a privilege, it is responsibility that appears as discomfort. It is sensitivity that appears as fatigue. It is mission that appears as lack of purpose. The people in this group have three things in common that are worth observing carefully, because they probably describe your life exactly. The first, they can never fully settle, even in comfortable lives. Something is always missing, and that something isn't solved by more money, more trips, more relationships, more consumption. Have you ever had everything you thought you wanted and still felt that hollow pit in your chest? Have you ever climbed a step you spent years scaling, only to ask yourself the next day, is that it? This isn't ingratitude. It's the antenna complaining that it still hasn't found the right frequency. That something isn't solved with Maurice. It's solved with direction. The second, they feel the collective cycles in their own body. When the world is heavy, they get heavy without understanding why. When there's an opening, they get restless without understanding why. Have you ever had a perfectly normal day with no objective reason to feel bad and still woken up with a tight chest? Have you ever had weeks when everything seemed meaningless while no one around you felt the same? Have you ever had intuitions about people close to you that were confirmed months later without anyone having told you anything? They are antennas, the third. Throughout their lives, they find a series of clues that seem to point to a specific mission. Books that fall off the shelf on just the right day. People who cross your life with an exact message and then disappear. Recurring dreams with the same symbol. Transmissions like this one that arrive at an unlikely timing, exactly in the week you needed it most. You've been calling that coincidence for years. A part of you knows it's not. If you recognize yourself in at least two of these traits, the rest of this video is the decision. Because one thing is admitting that you're part of it, something completely different is acting on it. And this is where most people get stuck. You've heard this conversation before, probably. Felt this before, gotten emotional over similar videos before. And what happened afterward? You stayed where you were, kept putting it off, kept collecting insights without applying any. And every time a window like this opens and closes without you using it, a part of you understands that the next call will have to shout louder. And the next calls usually come in the form of crisis, illness, loss, rupture, things that force the change you didn't make voluntarily. That's why I prepared a Magia M28 Exercicios. Not as another course to collect on your virtual shelf, but as the concrete structure that transforms this kind of window into applied decision, day after day, key after key, throughout the entire lunar cycle that begins today. The 28 keys aren't theory. They are daily exercises that reorganize a specific aspect of your internal structure. At the end of 28 days, you won't be trying to figure out who you are anymore, you'll be living it. The link is in the first pinned comment. If you let this window pass without responding, the next one will have to be harsher. That's not a threat. That's how it works. Leave a comment with the phrase EU Respondi to mark this decision publicly before moving on. So we arrived at the night of July 29th. If you've made it this far, you already understand that the value of this night isn't in looking at the moon. It's in looking inward while the moon is lighting up what needs to be seen. The practical recommendation for this specific night is simple. Find 30 minutes, no screen, no interruption, with a sheet of paper in front of you. Write down 3 things: what needs to end, what needs to begin, what needs to change. Don't filter, don't correct. Let out the first thing that surfaces, even if it sounds ridiculous, even if it sounds too small, even if it sounds too big. The part of you that knows is speaking, and it doesn't use the same logic the mind uses during the day. Then choose one of the 3, just one, and define the first physical, concrete move you will make in the next 48 hours toward that thing. A phone call, a conversation, an enrollment, a resignation, an apology, a registration. It doesn't have to be the final step. It has to be the first step. Anything that takes the decision out of the mental plane and places it on the physical plane. Because that's what this night asks for. It doesn't ask for prayer. It doesn't ask for more meditation. It asks for movement. The full moon is the witness. You are the one who acts. And while you do this, understand the following. The real meaning of this date is not in the sky. It's in the courage you will find inside yourself to take the step that has been postponed for weeks or months or years. That is the true calling of the 144,000. Not the promise of a magical rescue, not the fantasy that an external entity will come and organize your life, the responsibility to respond. You were found by this transmission to do what only you can do. Your next version is waiting on the other shore. The full moon is merely the moment when the bridge becomes visible. Crossing remains your choice. What you heard today was only the preparation, the revelation of what this July 29th window means for the coming months of your life, for the collective decisions that lie ahead, for the cycles that open after this one, is in the video that now appears on your screen. Click on it. The first 60 seconds will explain why this window is different from every other window in recent years and exactly what you need to do in the next 7 days, so as not to waste the alignment that has already begun. If you are among the 144,000, you already know that this transmission has not ended. It has only turned the page.